Welcome to the Your Fitness Chick podcast. Become your best self. I'm your fitness chick and host, Abby Smiley-Krause, and I'm excited to bring you a new fresh episode perfect for the month of January, because we know January is the month of new beginnings, fresh starts, all kinds of resolutions. And so I have felt very strongly for a really long time that how we can reach all of those things is starting with the right mindset. So when thinking about people to have on the podcast for the month of January, my Facebook friend Ryan Spouts, a thought leader, came to mind. So I couldn't be happier to welcome him and welcome aboard, Ryan. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on, Abby. As we go through 2024, like we talked about, one of my goals is to be on a bunch of these, and I'm super happy to have this be one that pops up in January. I know you're doing, good stuff over here, and really excited to be on.
Aw, well, I'm super happy to have you. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and why you consider yourself a thought leader? Like, what's your background?
Sure. So the thought leader part is kind of new. I'm just exploring a lot more of what's coming to my mind and allowing that to just come up. And a lot of it, when I really dig into it, it's not really coming from here, right? Like, it's allowing it to go from here to here and then process it and actually come out with something that's substantial instead of just saying words, right? Like we all have, these back and forth, I find myself even getting in less arguments and less, miscommunications, because there's just so much of that. But, going back in time, I've been, I'm 34, almost 35. And so lived enough life to understand what life is about, right? Like, I've gone through the few stages, and going all the way back to childhood, I was really into baseball, like played baseball for a very, very long time. And so the fitness part of that has always been there. Just being able to utilize that as a tool to get to where you need to be. And then when I was 11, my parents got divorced. And then that created, its own set of problems at that time in my life, of like really trying to figure out who I was becoming, and then being back and forth between parents' houses and trying to figure that all out. And, two families that loose lips on the outside that just say all of these things and all that stuff, so I really look up to my mom and dad in that regard, of how well they kept it all together. And now they're like, they're not, I'm not saying they're best friends, but they get along well enough to be able to coexist in life and in our lives with me and my brother. And so that's been nice. But coming up from that, high school, I was always kind of that kid that things just came easy to. In school, like grades were easy, everything was really easy. And like, I know people hate when I say that, but it's just like me looking back and going, that's the truth. And so I didn't really learn the work ethic, or that I recognized that I needed the work ethic, until I got to college and things weren't easy anymore. And throughout all of that time frame, really, I kind of think of the timing of the divorce kind of led me to want to fit in. And I never did. And it was because things came easy. Like, I was good at sports, I was good at school, and like people would, kind of put me down to bring me back down. And that's how I viewed it, was like I was less than, instead of recognizing I was more than. And I was bound for more things, right? And so a lot of people that I follow say the same thing. Like, they were going through this life, like trying to fit in, when really that was just them, like minimizing themselves to be in that group of people, instead of allowing themselves to be outward. And so through my 20s, I didn't drink in high school at all, really. I think I drank one time. And then I went to college and I got drunk 3 times in the first weekend, and then the rest is history for like 10 years, right? Like, it was like, that was my way. I fit in, right? Like, I could go out and we were all doing the same thing, and I could talk to people, and like my extroverted side, comfortable side came out, because all those inhibitions were gone. And really, like, that's what was the easy way to do it for me. So I did that for quite a long time. I think like 12 or 13 years. And then in 2021, I just kind of hit the end and I was like, this is not serving me anymore. And, you know, there's a lot of things that led up to that. It's not just like I woke up one morning and was like, hey, let's do this. But
your life was having some challenges because of it.
Absolutely. Yes. And it took me a long time to recognize that that was the reason behind all of it, right? You try to solve everything up here when there's something below and the foundation just keeps crumbling. So May of 24 or late April of 24, decided to get sober, and it's the best decision I've ever made. And so we're at 2.5 years now.
Wait, so April of 2022? I'm sorry, April of 2021. Okay.
Yep. So
coming up to 3 years in April this year.
Yeah. So that was, the best, like I said, the best decision I've ever made. It allowed a lot of the clarity to come up. And that's why I say the thought leader thing is kind of new, because a lot of what happens when you get sober is you have to think about a lot of stuff. You have to feel a lot of because things all that stuff. Right. Yeah. And the feeling aspect. Yeah. And so, I kind of utilized that time to really, like, unknowingly to myself until recently, allow myself to process a lot of that stuff. And that gave me the practice of being able to just, like, anything that comes in, I can take it down there with me and go, if you're going to survive, you got to be able to survive this, and then bring it back up. And if it's still there, then it's still there. And if it's gone, it's gone. And it wasn't meant for me. So, it took like I said, it took a long time to get there, and, there's still work to be done for sure. But that's really where the thought leader piece comes in, is being able to pull that stuff in. And even, like stuff, Jordan Peterson, sometimes it sounds like he's talking in circles, right? Like, and being able to internalize some of what he's saying and process it, and then be able to communicate it in a way that other people can understand it. Like, that's kind of the task I've taken on myself, is being able to communicate that aspect.
Well, I love that. And I didn't realize we have so much in common. It's like you're the male version of me, because growing up, I was the same way. I never had to study. I made straight A's. I was the best at everything because I did put a lot of pressure on myself to be the best, but it kind of naturally came. So, and I don't mean that egotistically, but it was just the way that it was. And a lot of it was my mindset and the pressure I put on myself. And I was a good girl in high school too. I drank one time in high school, and my parents were very strict. My parents stayed married, but they were on me. And so when I went to college, the shit hit the fan because I was like, oh my God, I can do whatever I want. Nobody's going to know. And I started partying. I actually had a traumatic event happen, and I used alcohol as my coping mechanism. And I did that for a long time. I went through bouts where I would have spells of not doing it, and then I would get sucked back into it. And ironically, a couple of years ago, I had another traumatic event happen, and had been falling back into those really bad patterns. My dad had passed away, and I had a divorce and all this stuff. So I was using alcohol to escape, like a lot of people do. And I didn't realize how many people do it, because you live with, I think you're going to identify when I say this, you have almost a shame about it. Like when you wake up the next day and you're like, I just made a complete ass out of myself in front of all of these people, and Lord knows what I did. And just the guilt of that, you felt like shit. You knew your higher self is telling you, girl or boy, what are you doing? This is not what you're supposed to be doing. You're meant for greatness. And so a couple years ago, I had an event happen, and it kind of snapped me awake. I got out of a really bad relationship, and that's when I still drink sometimes, but not like that. I don't drink to escape my life. I will partake, in a couple cocktails with friends or whatever. But it is something really different when you are not drinking and you're feeling your pain, you're healing through stuff that most people will go their whole life and they don't do it because it's an easy way out. It's common.
It's when you mentioned that you didn't recognize how many people are doing it, those people don't recognize they're doing it most of the time, because they're not willing to sit there and recognize, or they're not at the point where they feel they have.
I think a lot of people do recognize it. They're bullshitting themselves though. They don't want to have that.
Well, and that's that layer, right? Like they cover it up, and then they've covered it up for so long that they don't even know that the cover's
And
there.
because it's so normalized now, like everything in America revolves around food and alcohol, right? All holidays, all parties, all events. I've had a bad day. Let's get the wine out. Or, hey, it's somebody's birthday. Let's get the wine out. It's a celebration. And then also to cope with bad days.
Yeah.
And
that was one of the realizations I had at that point too, was, you know, I got married 5 years ago and we went to this amazing resort and we were there for a week. What did I do? I drank every day, right? Like we just had fun and we got drunk every day. And then we go on a vacation with family. What do? We drink every day, and that's how we're having fun. So like I was looking at it and looking back at it, it makes so much sense now. Like I literally was just doing the same fucking thing in different locations. Like I would go to the beach, have drinks. I would go to the, you know, go out in wilderness and take beer with, like it was every single time. And it wasn't like getting loaded every time, but it was still like I was doing the same exact thing. I was having the exact same experience in every single location we went to. And it was like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have an experience.
Because don't you feel you denied yourself a lot of the experiences or the memories that you could have had?
Yeah, I've been through that part of the processing, and you know, early on it was like, damn, like that was that shame and guilt part in a different direction, right? Like now you've cleared out this like I don't have to go through the shame cycle once a week. But now like all that, and that's what I meant by like things come up and you have to feel them, right? Like all that shame goes like, hey, we're here. And it's like, knock, knock, like open the door or we're going to bust it down. And you have to feel all of those things.
100%.
So like, not only did I go back through every shame cycle and feel all that again, then you feel like shit, like I robbed myself of all of this time. And then, you know, I'm at a point where I've been able to process through that. And it's like, okay, that's just what it was. And now today is day zero. And like even now, I still call every day zero for me. And it's not day zero of being sober. It's just like I'm better than I was yesterday. And then I need to get better than I am at zero, right? Like it just gives me that fresh start of being able to push past zero and get to
I love that. It reminds me actually of Jocko Willink. Do you know who Jocko Willink is? And he's actually done a couple of like videos and stuff talking about how it doesn't matter what happened yesterday. It doesn't matter what victories and celebrations you had yesterday. That's yesterday. What are you going to do today? You know, it's like,
yeah, good or bad, right? Like with a lot of these people, and that's the one thing that's explaining it to other people that I always have difficulty with is, you know, I say like today's day zero, and they're like, well, you had a good day yesterday. Like, why don't you celebrate? Like, because it was yesterday, and like that literally has zero impact. Like, I'm going to carry that feeling and motivation, but that's just a constant for me.
That's my new reset.
Like, because I don't react up and down like this, I don't have to create motivation. I don't have to create emotion. It's just there. And then when it's ready to come out, it comes out, and then it goes away, and now I'm back. Like, I don't have to do the up and down thing. And literally, I would say it's because of the alcohol, because the depressant piece, right? Like it drags you here, and then you get shameful and you go even lower, and then you have to fight your ass back to get back to just zero, like to get back to level. Yeah. And it's, you know, and some people take that to the extreme, and, you know, there's another drug that takes you into the high. So then you're back and forth. And, you know, ultimately that was caffeine at that point, right? Like even caffeine and alcohol still does that. But yeah, that's the piece for me, is just being able to live like content consistently. How do I, like, it's like content, but not content almost, right? Like I'm always
you're hungry for more.
I'm okay. Well, yeah.
And I think that if people stay that way, stay hungry, stay just starving for knowledge, for becoming better than you were before. And yeah, we're going to have days we screw up and we're not the best that we could have been, but we know that tomorrow is a new day and it's a fresh start. It's a new beginning, and it starts with the mindset. And so I think this is a really good beginning to what we're getting ready to go into next. But I want to wrap this part up with, because again, I think there's a lot more people that struggle with this than they let on. So when I went through this ending of this toxic relationship, it's been about 2 years now. I looked in the mirror and I said, you need to get your shit together, because you have to take accountability for the position I put myself in this certain relationship. And I took accountability for it. And my dad had passed away, and it was almost like I could hear him talking to me, like shaking me awake. And I looked in the mirror and I said, I'm coming for you. And so that began the process of me at Barnes and Noble every Sunday, walking through there, going to the self-help section. And I was buying so many books. I couldn't even remember if I bought them because I went every Sunday and I would buy like 5 to 7 at a time. And then I had to start taking pictures of them because when I went, I'm like, this looks really good. I'm like, oh, I think I already bought this. I don't remember. Let me look on my phone. But where I'm going with this is I had already knocked the drinking out. Like I didn't drink for almost a whole year because I knew I needed to get into my fitness, to get my mind right. Didn't need to fight with that. And I was walking in as usual on a Sunday and I was beelining towards the self-help section. But at the front of the Barnes and Nobles are like the new releases. And this is a really cool story and you're going to love this. So as I'm walking through, there's like skylights in there. And it was almost like there was this light shining down on this book that was in the new release section as I was passing it to get to where I usually go. And the cover was very vivid. It looked like a, what's that clothing? Pulitzer, the bright clothing. Anyway, it's a woman's clothing when I'm having a mind blank. Anyway, it was just this book cover screams at you. So I was like, what is this? So I went over and I looked at it and the name of the book was called Euphoric and it says how to ditch alcohol for a better life. And I was like, you're funny, Dad. Like, I was like, this is my dad. I'm like, I'd already stopped drinking, but I'm like, I'm going to get this book. Where I'm going with this is as I launched my fitness business, there's a lot of my clients that when they start with me, I, make them do a 3-day food and drink intake. And some of them are hitting the wine up pretty gosh darn good. And I said, listen, you need to stop drinking for 90 days while we're doing this first 90 days of the fitness program. And some of them are like, are you what? And I'm like, if you can't stop for 90 days, you might want to call Dr. Phil. But this is the book I want you to read because it's such a great book. So it talks about all these wonderful things. So it's a really good book. It's geared towards women, but men could benefit from it too. But anyway, if anybody on the other side listening, that's a great book to get. And it can really shift your mindset into thinking clearly. So I don't want.
There's one by that shifted, just to throw in the book piece there. I want to see if I can find it quick on my Audible list. You're talking about how you're buying all these books. Like there's the amount of times I've bought the same book twice on Audible is unfortunate. But let me see if I can find it. It's by Kate Flanders. Adventures in Opting Out by Kate Flanders. So I actually listened to this book a year before I decided to get sober. And I was like, that was really when that switch kind of flipped of like, I know it's there, right? Like I recognized it. And when I was listening to that book, it was all about really like being okay with just not having to be out or having to like, there's getting rid of the FOMO aspect of it. And that book for me was a very much like the pioneer into that thought process.
I'll have to check that out. And I think the thing people need to remember too, as we're getting ready to go into the next segment, is sometimes if people drink to be happier, that's different than drinking to be happy, right? And escaping your life because, you can get out of control. And I definitely did. And it was not a good place. It sounds like we were on the same page with that. But it's also something I don't do all the time because obviously I'm into fitness. And so, but every now and again, the fitness chick likes a glass of Prosecco. So anyway, I hope that was good for some people. But I want to go into when you decided to do this thought leader thing, because you really do post some pretty amazing stuff on your Facebook page. And I'll put the link on the podcast show notes so people can follow you because you have a pretty big following.
Yeah, we're getting there.
But what made you decide? Was it part of your own healing and the desire to help other people come to this side of that made you want to put that kind of information and inspiring messages out? Or what made that spark ignite that made you want to become a thought leader?
That's a great question with a loose answer. So ironically, I have a OneDrive folder, like the storage OneDrive, right? I have a OneDrive folder from like 7 or 8 years ago where when I was scrolling through Twitter, I would just like save the pictures that I really liked with inspired
something that
people.
touched you.
Never used them for anything at that point, but they're there. Like it was just like that. Like I like to call it, mental masturbation. Right? Like you're going through the loop. Like you're not fucking doing anything, but it feels good.
There you go.
So like there's nothing on either side, but it feels good. So like that's what I look back at that kind of time frame was just like I just kept going through this loop of just like, I needed the inspiring quote that day. I needed this motivational quote that day. And just like it was where I was at the time. So really like the thought leader thing probably started back then. As far as working into it, a lot of it comes from the ADHD aspect of my life and being able to recognize the dopamine loop and chasing that. And so that's where a lot of it comes from, is the positive reward that comes on the other side of sharing that stuff. And so it like you mentioned the following piece, that's there because I was chasing the dopamine loop of the like hit or the comment hit and the engagement. And so that actually led into me exploring it a little deeper there. It led into me being able to connect with people that I wouldn't be able to if I just met them face to face. Because it cuts through that veil of like, how's the weather today? Like it drives
small
me,
talk.
Like, I love meeting new people, but that's what comes every time is that small talk. And I just want to go like, can we just cut the shit and get to something that's real, please? And so what that, posting that stuff, what it does, like, if you want to look at it as law of attraction, it brings the people that want to talk that way into my realm. And so now I have this access of like, okay, you engaged with this. I have something to talk to you about that's not how's business or how's like you're in real estate, how many deals, like it's just all that fake shit that we all talk about. It drives me insane. I can cut straight through that by drawing people into me with that kind of stuff.
And I love that.
And so that's really
I love that. And I think that it's people like you that are willing to be transparent about, nobody's perfect. A lot of people pretend they are. I've effed up many times publicly. And, but it takes courage to admit that, you know what, I'm not perfect and this is my shadow. And maybe you can benefit from learning about some of this stuff that I'm going to share with you. Cause it was the same thing with me too, because I do like a Monday mindset every Monday. So we have a lot in common here. And I was chasing that dopamine hit, with getting likes and followers because it did excite me. Because when you've been in a dark place where you've struggled with your life, with alcohol and with depression and all this stuff, and when you get out of it and you have hope and you're like, my life's on fire now, you get so excited about that dopamine that you want everybody to feel that way. Right?
Yeah, and that's really, I'm sure you've seen recently posting quite a bit about Reconnect, which is Real Estate Connect. So I feel like there's a huge disconnect in the
because you're part of the real estate. We haven't mentioned that yet, but you're.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So there's like it's that piece of it though. It's that connection piece. And I heard a quote the other day, and I don't remember, it may have even been a comedian, but it was something along the lines of like, you mentioned you were going to the self-help section in the book, book, right? If we would call it group health, more people would buy the books. Because they think they have to do it on their own. And that's really where a lot of this comes from, is like, I was recognizing these people that were super successful in the public eye that have been sober for 25 years. And it's like, okay, well, they can do it. I can do it. And so then that's really just me modeling that aspect of, that's where the vulnerability comes from. It's like, they were vulnerable enough to tell you that they had a problem and they cut it. So why can't I do that and have the same response and get one person to say, thank you for doing that. And that's all right.
And I love that. And it does take mental grit and discipline to fight through some of that. So I think that that's really important, but I think we're almost in, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts before, I don't want to call it necessarily a cultural movement, but more people are allowing the shame game to happen transparently, right? Because, I think that a lot of people who don't know my dark secrets on social media until this past couple years when I did post what I had been through, would have had no idea the shit I was going through. Like it looked like I was had my shit together and I was a hot freaking mess. And so I think that I felt that I looked at people who looked like they had their shit together and honestly was like, I'm a hot mess. When I looked at them, like, look, they've got all their stuff together. I'm like a hot mess behind the scenes. And I thought, you know what? By being transparent and showing people, no, I'm not. I'm a effing mess sometimes. And I know that you probably are too. And it's okay. But you do have to take some accountability if you want to cross over the other side and do some work and read books and read positive memes, follow positive influencers and thought leaders like you.
Yeah, it's just never stop that never stop learning piece. And in regards to the the negative pieces, like I've almost recognized that like I'm not invincible to it, but I'm invincible to it because I can feel it and learn from it so much faster because I'm willing to actually feel it. And so like a lot of times, and I've done it in the past, right? Like you cry at a funeral, but you don't feel it. You're just crying because that's the environment you're in, and you go home and then you never deal with that problem.
The grief.
Right? Yes, like you never allow yourself to actually feel it. And this past year, my grandma passed away in July. Sorry. I've had all 4 of my grandparents until this one. So it's like my first first real major loss in a family member. And the position I was in was able to I was literally able to go there, feel it. I had to, or I was chosen to do one of the readings in front of church. And I'm thinking like, I am going to fucking lose my mind. This is going to be awful. Right. And, they chose me obviously for this reason of being able to speak in front of people and stuff like that. And I just remember like, I developed a coping strategy while I was on stage. And it was like, I was so impressed with myself at that point, and I'll brag about it, for a little bit here, but like the podium had 2 arms. So I put my hands on top of the arms and I felt myself kind of going into that, like, ooh, I'm really feeling this. And this is going to be really tough for me. And I just pushed my hands flat. And like, that was my release of like, okay, I can get through this and be able to like, I'm still feeling it, but I'm able to present for other people because this is so important for other people.
That was your anchor.
Yeah, it was so amazing for me, like to recognize how far I'd come, right? Like in the past, it would have just been like, I'm going to be a blubbering mess and that's just what it's going to be. And just being able to make it, and it's only a minute long, but just knowing that and those coping mechanisms of feeling it, I was able to get through it so much better. And just the skill set that comes out from that was just, it's a lot of fun to learn.
It's pretty amazing because I think that too, that when you learn that you want peace also, like when your soul has been in turmoil for so long and when you find that little sneaky piece of peace and then you grasp it and then you'll do anything to keep it. And that's why also you learn not only better coping mechanisms, but you also learn not to be reactive as much, right? So like people will say stuff to me because the more people that you get to follow you, the more haters you're going to get, right? And you know what? At first I would be like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody said that, And I'd be like, listen here. Like I would start, and then I'm like, that's them. That's not me. But that was my ego taking hold. And I recognized it. I stopped it. And I'm like, I'm going to say absolutely nothing. And that is when you've arrived.
Yeah, I've got, there's one story like that from the gym. And I was at the gym and got engaged in a conversation with somebody that I talk to pretty often. Like we talk like at the gym.
Casual conversation.
Right? But then we turn our half-hour workout into like hour 15 because we did that how much.
Yeah.
But so she's standing and I'm sitting on the bench in a Smith machine. And so I'm hogging the Smith machine. We talk for 10 minutes and the guy comes over and he's kind of like, are you done anytime soon? And I'm like, yeah, I got 2 sets left. And I gave him like knuckles and he walked away. But as he was walking away, the girl that was talking to me did not respond that way. She's like, who are you to fucking say, like, got like that. So it was so obvious. I was just like, I don't have to do that anymore. Like, I don't care. Like, if that's his energy, he can have it. Cause I've got all of what I need right here. I don't need you to like me.
Yeah.
So, that's a big piece, like you said, with the peace. And the aspect of learning that not everyone's going to like you, and you don't need
and that's
them
okay
to be successful.
That's okay, because most likely I probably don't like you either. So it's
Right.
okay. So what would you recommend to people? Because we're kind of making it sound, I don't want to say easy, but it's extremely difficult, and it's a daily practice. And like I said, sometimes I'll mess up and I'll lose my shit. And then I'm like, oh my God, okay, that felt really awful to do that. Okay, back to the drawing board. Okay, now let me level up, right? So, not to, because it isn't easy and people need to do the work. What tips would you recommend for people that are struggling with maintaining a positive outlook on life?
Look a little bit deeper. So this is one thing that I'm really challenging myself on that real estate side of challenging people, right? Is getting back to what really matters in your life. And it is, like you said, it's difficult to kind of bottle that. And the reason we make it sound easy is because we've done a really good job of bottling that feeling. And so when we operate, and we always have that feeling sitting on our desk, right? And when we look away and we're not noticing it's there, we can veer off. And then we look back and go, that's right, I'm not that guy. This is what I want. And so if you're able to, it's going to be a challenge, and you may not even want to do it on your own. You have to have someone that's going to challenge you to actually figure out what, and it sounds corny, what your why is for everyone to understand it simply. Yeah. But I'm calling it core purpose because it's deeper to me that way. But it's the kind of the same concept. So you ask somebody like, well, why do you do what you do? And they're going to give you an answer straight out of the head, right? It's going to come out of there. Then you ask yourself, okay, well, why do I want that? And I've got a story that one of my mentors, he talks about it. He's like, I want a six-pack. And it's applicable for the fitness thing, so it's even better here. It's like, well, I want a six-pack. Well, why do you want a six-pack? Because I want to look good. Okay, why do you want to look good? Because I want my wife to want to have sex with me. Okay, why do you want your wife to want to have sex with you? Because I think sex is a healthy part of a relationship. Well, why do you want a healthy relationship? Because I want my kids to see a model of a healthy relationship that I didn't have when I was a child. So I want a six-pack to, I want to model a healthy relationship for my family.
You're peeling it down.
And that's only 4 levels.
Yeah.
Like once you can go down, like I challenge people to go 7.
I love that.
And 7's hard to get to. Like even for me, 7's hard. Like you get to a point that's really tough to get below that. And a lot of parents will, especially mothers, and it's nothing against mothers, it's just the way it is. Like guys, we think of what we do, and women, you think of how you feel instantly. Like that's first thought. A lot of women will get about 3 down and go, my kids, and bail. Like that's where they're just like, okay, I can just say it's my kids, and that's why I do these things. Well, okay, but why is it for your kids? Because you can say you're doing anything for your, I'm going out and having fun, so I'm not cranky with my kids. Okay, well, you're going to go out and have 6 beers. That doesn't serve your kids on the other side, right? So, that's where I challenge a lot of parents, especially, even go farther than just the kids. Like, there's more to it than just that, right? That, and getting below that, or I even like to flip it and say getting above that, because when you get to those layers, all of this stuff is encompassed in that. So like you're getting to the top of the pyramid of what you really want, and everything else that you mentioned throughout that process is going to be taken care of if you operate from that.
I love that.
And so just put it on the wall.
I love that. And I think that is such a really good, easier thing for people to comprehend and to run with, because I think also a lot of people just aren't truthful with themselves. They're not truthful with themselves. They lie to themselves. They bullshit themselves. They say they're okay being mediocre. They lie to themselves that they're happy. But there's also some people, like we briefly touched a few segments back, that they don't even realize. They're in autopilot mode. They've lived this way. That's how their parents lived. So this is how I'm living. But then they start resenting people because they know deep in their core and in their being that they're meant for something better, right? And so by acknowledging and peeling away those layers and breaking it down like you shared, which is great, they might have an aha moment. And really at that point, and only then, by being truthful and realizing what they really want out of life, can they start to create action and movement to achieve it.
Yeah, I went to a conference in Arizona this past weekend, and I was the fox in the hen house because I was probably one of 3 lenders at a conference of 1,100 real estate agents.
Because real estate's your background.
Yeah. So I'm a mortgage broker.
Okay.
So been doing that for almost a decade now, and but being on that side of it was kind of fun, right? Like I was the guy that's like operating under the guise of being there as the real estate and getting all the information kind of thing, and it was fun. But they had a couple of really great presenters, and one of them was a positivity psychologist. Ooh. And yes, this exists. So it was fantastic. Yeah. I probably took 8 pages of notes while he talked, and he talked very fast. And his name was Sean Achor, Achor. He actually has a TEDx.
Oh, I know who that is.
He's
I know who that is. He's been on Mel Robbins
a lot.
I think Mel Robbins podcast.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And he's been on, daytime.
Sure.
TV,
yes.
Those places too. But he's just great. And all, like, he talks very research based, which kind of clicks with me because of the numbers aspect of it and that kind of stuff. But where I'm going with this is basically, he says that, where you're talking about that coasting thing, when people get stuck in one lens of viewing the world for too long, they will continue that. It's very hard to break it because they don't even know it's there. So these lenses that we're viewing our lives through, you have to find a way to find a positive one and just put it over, and whatever happens. And it's not irrational positivity or irrational optimism. It's not like sunshine and rainbows, but it's like when something fucked up happens, you're able to go, okay, what's to learn and how do I get through it? And he goes on to say, if you can't do it for yourself, right? Like if you can't, because that's really where people get stuck. It's like, I don't know how to improve myself. Try to improve people around you. Like if you can't do it for yourself, if there's somebody sitting next to you that you can look over and just smile, like literally that's all you got to do. Show your teeth to that person, and the mirror neurons in our brain will literally make that person smile, unless they're cold, right? Unless they're ready for it and they're just like, I'm not smiling. Like it's like the yawning
effect.
I was getting ready to say that. That's what it is. It's mirror neurons in your brain. So it's the same concept. Like these muscles trigger something in your brain, but by me just smiling at you, your brain smiled. Even though you didn't physically smile on your face, your brain did. So now you've literally tweaked that person's positivity up a notch, and they don't even know that it happened. And you can feel me getting excited about it because of the way that he explained it. And so one of the techniques that he said was very easy to do, take 2 minutes in the morning and send like a 2-minute text or email to somebody that's in your life. That's like a positive, like, I appreciate this about you. And by just doing that, he said after 6 to 9 months of doing this every day, which is difficult to do because you start running out of people and you got to mix and match and that kind of stuff. Like he said, like day 8, you're like scrambling because you realize how many weak connections you have in your life. And you're like, I can't text that person this random thing. Like it's going to be crazy. Text them, send it. But he says after 6 to 9 months, the effect in your brain is as strong as any of the top antidepressants.
I believe that.
Like they've measured that. So just by doing that. And then the other thing is take a brisk walk for 15 minutes, 5 days a week. Just get out and move.
Get your body moving.
And, where I was telling you that like my thought leader thing came from, really it was like, I just started going to the gym. And it was my way of go to the gym and move. And while I'm in the gym, I would throw on some Audible because I knew I should be reading, right? And a lot of it, that's why I said I duplicate books because a lot of it I didn't process. But that's what it was. Throw on Audible so I'm improving my brain and go to the gym. And over time, it's just like this becomes something that changes your mind. And so, even my wife looks at me and goes, how are you so positive all the time? And it's literally because I've done that for so long. You've done the work. That my brain is chemically changed.
100%. It's really amazing when you think about the endless possibilities and potential that we all have. that we all have, and only a fraction of the people currently are doing the work to get to that side. And so, because if it was easy, everybody would do it. Obviously, staying in your cozy, warm bed, especially in the last couple of weeks in Florida, sounds more appealing to a lot of people than getting your ass out of bed and driving to the gym. And I'm right on the same page with you, because I think you also begin to do multiple things. But number one, going back to what you were just talking about from what Shauna Core said, that, you know, if you can't do it for yourself, a lot of people can't do it for themselves because they don't feel they're worthy of it.
They also think they have to do it themselves.
Right. True. But a lot of people don't think they deserve or are worthy.
Absolutely.
Based on whatever shame they haven't healed through, whatever guilt they have, whatever grief, whatever feelings they haven't felt. For whatever reason, they don't feel worthy. And when they don't feel worthy, then they don't have the discipline to show up for themselves because they don't believe they're worthy of it. So I'm on the same page with you as far as not fake it till you make it, but put on a positive lens until you start to believe what you're trying to tell yourself.
Yeah, and those two techniques that he said, like, that will physically change. Like I said, my brain is chemically different now. That will physically change your lens without you even.
And physiologically, you are doing that by working out anyway, too. Yeah. You're physiologically changing just all the mechanisms in your body. So I think that also people, when you start to show up for yourself consistently, like both of you and I do, when we go to the gym, obviously you're very physically fit too, that when you do that, when you show up for yourself consistently, that's when you begin to have that confidence and worth, that value, and know that you deserve all the goodness that life has to offer. So,
and the path is generally, like I said, like if you can't do it for yourself, you start showing up for someone else, and then you're going to show up. There's going to be one day, and I can guarantee this happens because I think it happens with every single person. There's that one day where that person you're showing up for doesn't quite show the appreciation that you thought you should have gotten from what you were doing. And you're going to go, fuck that, I did the right thing. And when you get to that point, you're like, now you start showing up for yourself.
And you're doing it because you do it with no expectations.
Yep. And that's when the expectations go out and you're just like, okay, I'm going to do the right thing every time. And the right thing is not what you decide is right or wrong. It's what I feel is right or wrong. And you show up and you're like, it doesn't matter what you think because I know I'm doing the right thing.
And, you know, when you do that, it just feels good anyway. But I think a lot of people, you know, I have a friend actually that she'll give something to somebody and she'll be like, oh my God, they didn't even say thank you. Like, how rude, and da da da. And I'm like, well, did you give it to them because you wanted to give them that feeling of love and acknowledgement that you appreciate them, or were you wanting a thank you? And so
I would say like surprises aren't for the person you're giving the surprise to.
There you go.
Because if you really wanted them to feel good, you're just going to say, I'm
with no expectation.
But there's so many people that build it up like, oh, we got a surprise for you. Like, that's all for the person that's saying they have the surprise.
That's right.
Person, because it's like, oh, I get to hold, like, it's the ego thing. It builds them up without them even recognizing it.
And a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing that.
Yeah, it's pretty. There was a situation revolving around my wedding that really popped.
Oh, weddings will do that.
Yeah, well, and like they were telling me they weren't coming, and then they were like, I got upset about it because they were somebody I expected to be there. And so I just like put my feelings out, and they're like, oh, we were on our way. I'm like, really? Fuck you. Like, why did that happen? Like, why did we do that? If you would have just said you were coming, none of this situation happens. And then they didn't come, so it all ended up being spiraling.
Weddings are
so these small things, right?
You know, it's kind of funny. When my sister was getting married, she was dealing with so much shit from everybody. Like, we were raised Christian. She was marrying somebody who was Catholic. Like, that was a big deal. And somebody was like, you can't play that song. It sounds like a Catholic song. And I'm like, that's why Abby eloped in Vegas. Because I was like, I'm not dealing with any of this shit. But yeah, the ego is something that a lot of people, they don't have any idea what it is. I didn't until probably about, I would say 10, 15 years ago when I was doing some soul searching, and I read a book by Gary Zukav called The Seed of the Soul. I don't know if you've ever read that book. It's an amazing book. but really just goes through the ego aspect of everything. And, they kind of say ego stands for edging God out. But it makes you realize a lot of things when you acknowledge the ego shadow self, and it allows you to become more powerful and channel your energy into the goodness, into your higher self, and pull yourself out a lot better than staying anchored in.
And when you get there and you start talking about that piece, it's amazing the people that will call you egotistical because you have that representation of
I know.
yourself. Like, it's like, that's not where it's coming from, friend. Like, I want you to be right next to me. Like, this is not me putting you down. This is me just being where I'm at. And like, it's so crazy the amount of people that do that. Like, they'll just try to drag, it's like the crabs in the bucket, right? Try to drag you back.
I don't want to say I feel sorry for them, because that would, I think, be belittling to people. I would just say I wish for them that they could understand where I'm coming from. But, again,
yeah, I think you put it into action in your content too. Like, just the content that you put out, it's not you saying like, hey, you didn't work out, you should have. It's like, this is how you get there. I'm showing you 100% of how you get there. And if you want to jump with me, I'm cool with it. If you don't, I'm also cool with that. I have no judgment against you either way. But you can't, on the other side, don't come to me with those fucking complaints if you're not willing to do the work. Like, that's where, like, because I've got my mindset over here. I'm not letting that chirping come in. Like, if you have a problem that can be solved, like, I'm not going to give you this, I'm not going to tell you the solution. But if you're coming to me with a complaint, like, you get to complain one time. If it comes back, like, now we're just bitching. And like, how do we get past
that's
this?
right. Because I remember you actually commented on one of my posts that I did that got taken out of context. And some of these people, the Karens, remember? And you were like, fuck those Karens. Like, you just do you or whatever. But people blew it up because instead of looking at it, because it was actually I have a funny sense of humor, I think. And it was actually meant to be positive, because this guy's a total dick at my gym. And to watch him have to go way lower in weight, I kind of was like, take that, you asshole. But anyway, if they would have known the person I was speaking of, instead, I think people were like, oh my God, she's making fun of like a 90-year-old man that's just trying to work out. And I'm like, no, it's not that. I mean, I'm a cheering on of everybody that shows up. But yeah, I remember you commenting now. But people like to just find the negative. Some people just like to find the negative in anything. It is. And you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you want to succeed in this lifetime. So
that's, if I'm saying the biggest challenge, just one point on that. The biggest challenge I have is with that. So a lot of times when we go back into older environments, people expect you to be the same person despite, like, I live 2,000 miles from my family, right? Like, they live in Minnesota and I live in Florida now. And so when I go back, a lot of them expect me to engage the exact same way that I did before. And so even with the drinking, oh, you're too good because you don't drink anymore. Like, I get that all the time. Or I did. I don't anymore because I just don't need the bullshit anymore. And I just stand up to it. I'm like, if that's what you think, then yeah, that's what it is. And like, just, okay, if you want to think that, you can have your world that thinks that. Mine's not.
Right. And it doesn't affect me either way.
Exactly. Like, I'm going home and I'm going to be just as successful whether you think I am or not. It just doesn't.
That's such a good feeling. So if you could pick just 3 things, Ryan, just 3, what are the top 3 tips that you would give to listeners to help them become their best selves?
Try everything that you want to.
Okay.
This is one of the things, especially with the ADHD mindset of, like I was telling you, that chasing the dopamine thing. Today, I've done yard work. I put up grab bars in the bathroom because I'm actually at my rental property right now, so I'm being a landlord today. And I've done yard work. I've set up a grab bar, and then I built this like standing desk while I'm here so that I have this view. So like, I'm just that person that's just like, just try it. You might be good at it and you might be able to, like, for me, it was a cost saving thing up front, but now I'm like handy around the house and I just figure things out. Right. So allow yourself to be exploratory. Okay. People will often say that you need to rest more. I would argue you're not doing enough of the things that are in your passion or in your purpose. And it's probably because you don't know it.
Okay.
So if we're doing something that we enjoy. Like my wife, she's like, you got to take a rest. You got to take a break. I'm like, fuck that. I love what I'm doing. I just want to keep doing it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not that I'm a workaholic. It's just that like, this is what I like to do. Like if I could podcast all day, I would do it. Like I've done, this is the fourth one today, by the way, Abby, because I had a bunch of recordings this morning. And they're my podcasts, but it's still the same thing. Like it's kind of a therapy thing for me. If I could do this all day, I would, because I fucking love it. Like this interaction, and like you've given me points that I didn't think of before, and now I get to process them and move
likewise
that way. So you know, so try everything, do more of what you love, because whether you get paid for it or not, it doesn't matter at that point, because you're just going to enjoy it. And eventually, maybe if you're doing more of the random things, you might find something that you can get paid for. And then you get out of that shitty job you don't like to go to anyway. And then read as much as you can. And when I say that, I don't mean read every page of every book. I mean, pick up a book. If it catches your attention in the first 20 to 30 pages, keep reading. If it doesn't, put it down. Go find a new book. Because when you get stuck in that, like, I have to finish the book, you recognize that you think you have to finish everything. And this, for me, this thought process, or this understanding of this comes from finishing every drink. Like literally at the end of every night, if I opened a beer, I had to finish it. And so I look back and I go, did that serve me? Like finishing everything I had open or started, did that serve me? It didn't. And so then I bring it in and I go, okay, well, what else is causing me pain by trying to finish it? And reading was one of them. Like I read 126 books in 2020.
Wow.
And that was painful as shit.
That was during COVID, right?
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it's audible. So I contribute that kind of thing as reading as well. I like to downplay it a little bit so people don't think I'm a fucking crazy person. Like I'm an intake.
I love
person.
reading.
Like I love intake. And so like that was the easiest way, on the way to the gym, at the gym, on the way home from the gym, I get 2 hours of audible. And when you listen at 2x speed, you can finish a lot of books. So, so like I said, it was painful. So like, just, that can also translate into be okay with not finishing everything, right? Like if you don't have to finish everything just because you start it, like if it's going to make you better, maybe, but if it's not going to make you better and it hurts to do it, just stop fucking doing it. Like you don't have to do everything that hurts in life. Life doesn't have to hurt all the time. You can enjoy it when you're finishing things. And I think there's a lot of people that don't know that. And it's surprising to me.
And then, you know what? I think you presented a really valid point about finishing stuff, because the first thing that came to mind for me when you said that was, as a child, when finish your plate, finish your dinner.
Yeah, it comes from a long time before drinking, but like that's where it instilled, and then drinking.
Right, it's deeply rooted down. Like finish your homework, finish. So obviously there are certain things we do have to finish, but
and a lot of that stuff comes from like, because I told you so, or because I said so. And for me, like, and this drives my wife nuts, because I ask why on fucking everything. Like everything. Because a lot of my childhood, I grew up in farm country. My entire childhood was because I fucking said so. Like if I say jumps, you say how high, right? Like I hate that mentality. So, I'm at the point where like with my kids, I'm not going to do, like, that's the one thing I'm like, if that comes out of my mouth, I'm going to slap myself in the face of like, because I said so, and I know there's that stage where they just ask why. And I'm just going to try to find a reason or find a way to get them to go, oh, okay. And like, I'll go to war with it. But, like that's the one thing. So like with that as a backdrop, you don't have to finish everything. And there's a reason for everything, good or bad. And there's something to learn from that.
I love those 3 tips. I think those are really valid. I think those are easy to do. And I think I think like they're all easily applicable. Like you can easily start doing all 3 of those things right now. Like you don't have to prepare for them. You can just immediately start acknowledging the things that aren't working for you. Like that's the thing. You have to have a come to Jesus meeting with yourself and go.
Yeah. And the starter point for me is just do it once.
Yeah.
So, because the first time is painful. Like after I finished those books, right? Like now I've set for myself, I read 12 books in 2021. because I came from reading 126 to where I was forcing myself to finish every fucking book just so I could screenshot it and put it on social media of like, finish another one. And then I got to 2021 and I was like, I don't want to fucking do this. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I hate this book.
And so I just gave myself permission to not do it. And the first time I set the book down and go, I didn't really like that one. It was like, ugh. Like, oh my God, I just did it. Like, I didn't force myself to finish it. What if I missed like the best tip in the world?
I know, I felt the same way.
Like, Ryan, just go read the book. But if you can do it once, you can do it 100 times. You just have to do it once. And then when you finish that one time, do it once again. Right? Like, that's, you know, it's that mentality kind of comes from the gym of like, just do one more rep. And if you can do one more, then do one more after that. And like, it's just that ability. So that kind of summarizes all three of those. Like, they're easy to do, but you have to do the first one. And then if you make everyone the first one, you're like, cool. And then you look back and you're like, shit, I did this for 300 days in a row. Like, now I have 300 stacked up. And it's so gratifying when you
exactly. So, like, you know, a couple memes that I've posted, it's like, just become 1% better each day, or read one page each day, or write one chapter of your book each day. So it's just the little things. And I think people, when they look at these goals, they look like a mountain and it looks unachievable. And so they're like, fuck it, I'm not going to do it. Instead of going, you know what? I'm going to climb that son of a bitch. But one step, one day,
like, you don't have to see the
correct. Time. One page, one repetition, one more visit at the gym, one day at a time. And so it's a really good point. You just start. You have movement. You do it at least one time. You find out, oh my God, I can do it. It's like taking the training wheels off, right? And going, oh my God, I can do it.
Well, and the world keeps spinning. So if you're not moving,
that's
you're not
right.
moving. Like, the world's moving and you're not. So it's, you know, that's that if you're not winning or if you're not gaining ground, you're probably
right. If you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
So
many metaphors.
So as we wrap up, so you have your own podcast.
Yeah, I got a couple of them now. I just started a second one. The first one is One Man's Journey. That's kind of for the men's side of the world. I noticed that there's a gap that doesn't really allow us to kind of talk about this stuff, right? Like, I have to, because I'm able to do this, I have to try to empower other people to do the same thing. And so we've had, I think I've recorded like 21 episodes now. There's 11 of them live. The editing takes me fucking forever, so I hate doing it. But so that's kind of where the mental block is, right? Like, I just am like, okay, do one. And then I end up doing 2 or 3, and then I batch them out, and then I don't do it again for 3 weeks. And that's just kind of where it was. But so I've got that one. And then the Reconnect podcast, that's the real estate based one. And I just recorded my first session this morning, and now I've got 4 stacked up. And so I'll be launching that shortly. Cool. And that one's revolving around that connection piece and helping agents who think they know why they do things. Because we always see in real estate, like if you're looking at any realtor page, that you can tell they kind of don't really know where they're operating from. They're going to go, oh, I do all my work for my buyers. Fuck that. You don't. Like, come on. Like, call me if you need real estate. Like, fuck that. Like, let's operate from a place of core, right? Like, get past that small talk stuff. And so, like, that's really the drive for me, is to reignite people to recognize it's not a zero-sum game. It's okay to connect with other people in the industry. And we don't, like, the lender realtor battle for me is a wall that I'm like tasked myself with kind of breaking down a bit. And so if people are in the industry, they understand what I'm saying. It's always like the realtor's going to say it's the lender's fault, and the lender's going to say it's the realtor's fault. And like, there's no transaction that's connected. Right. And if we can get through that, we're going to be able to give a better experience for our buyers and for the people that are in the transaction. And that's the whole goal. It's just like, let me scream that from the roof.
And then because everybody wins. Right. So I'll make sure I have all of your info in the show notes on how people can tune in to those podcasts.